everybody, and thanks for joining us. This live webinar that's being cast through and streamed by LinkedIn as well. Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about AI readiness, preparing enterprises and organizations for AI adoption. And we've got an amazing panel of speakers all coming from around the world. So we're across all time zones, and I'm sure many of you who are watching, you might be. It's a very informal session. I'm going to introduce everybody, including myself. Then we're going to just jump straight into questions around sort of AI adoption and organizational engagement. There is no Q&A, but I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities via LinkedIn to then sort of post comment and for us to respond. So I'll start with myself. My name is Amir Ansari. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at an educational company down in Melbourne, Australia, little sunny Melbourne, called Academy XI. And I'm thrilled to be joined here with a panel of esteemed guests. Our mission at Academy XI is to uplift skills in enterprise and build a future-ready workforce and organization. Now, our organizer of this webinar is RandomWalk, which is a global AI product and service company. And their goal is to help organizations adopt and scale AI effectively. They also bring a strong AI community, including running sessions such as this, bringing sort of thought leaders together to have some really meaningful conversations. And so we're partnered with RandomWalk as a sort of dedicated learning partner. And together we're building an academy focused on digital skills transformation, of which obviously AI is quite prevalent at the moment and very popular. So we know AI is no longer a question of if or how. It's more about, it's not about if, it's more about how and how quickly. And so many organizations are still struggling to adopt and scale their initiatives and sort of workforce appropriately. So today we're just going to explore some of these challenges with these amazing esteemed guests, share some best practice, some war stories, and discuss what it really takes to make sort of AI work in the real world for organizations. So without further ado, I'm going to do some introductions. Now, I couldn't quite memorize everybody's amazing history of work, so I'm just going to sort of refer to my notes as we go. First and foremost, we've got Dmitry Kharchenko from Germany, and he's a founder and CEO of TechBiz Global, and he's also an expert in building scalable digital products, data-driven solution, and AI platforms. He's named as one of the top 25 worldwide fintech CTOs of 2021 in the Financial Technology Report, and he's also been named as a top 10 CTOs to watch out for last year in 2024 by the International Business Times. So great to have you with us, Dmitry.
Thank you very much, Amir. Happy to be here.
Number 2 on my list, we've got Samuel Salzer, based in Stockholm in Sweden. So he's a co-founder and behavioral strategist for a company called Nuance, and one of the first chief behavioral officers in Europe. I think it's an amazing title. I'm obsessed with that, so I need to find out more about that title, Sam. And he's also the founder of Habit Weekly. So he runs a podcast which includes the largest community of behavioral designers. He's a behavioral scientist by trade, specializing in the interaction of product design and AI. And with his work having impacted 350 million plus users worldwide. So I'm sure I'm one of those users as well. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Really nice to be here. Thanks, Amir.
No worries. Number 3 on my guest, esteemed guest, Dr. Youssef Bassim. He's based in Lebanon, but last time I talked to him, he was in the middle airport, traveling the world. So it's good to have him with us right now. He's the chair of Digital Health and AI Division at Arab Hospitals Federation. He's the chief operating officer for the University of Bellarmine, and he's also consulting at head of orthopedic department. So he's been a healthcare leader with over 20 plus years of experience in clinical, academic, and managerial roles. He's passionate about leveraging AI, which is fantastic to see, especially in the digital health space, to transform healthcare systems and improve outcomes, which I think we all agree is very needed. So welcome,
RandomWalk, for having me on this exciting roundtable on preparing enterprises for the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic. And lucky last, but by no means least, we have Mohamed, and he's coming to us from the United Arab Emirates. And Mohamed is the founder of FinTech Bazaar. He's voted the top 50 CIOs in the Middle East. So we've got a lot of top voted individuals in here. I think I need to go and get some voting as well, perhaps. And he's a senior consultant for digital transformation and fintech at International Finance Corporation. So he's spearheaded the AI-driven innovation and large-scale digital transformation initiatives across multiple industries, including PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, UAE Bank, Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank. And he's an advisory board member and community leader and actively participating in shaping the fintech ecosystem. Good to have you on board, Mohamed. Fantastic. All right. Enough about me. This is not about me. I'm just sort of facilitating, but it's about seeing these amazing people share their thoughts. So I'm going to start with one of the first questions to kick us off. Challenges in AI implementation, right? But we know that as amazing as a technology it is not without its hurdles. So I'm going to start with you, Roushdy, right? We know fintech is one of the most AI-driven industries. And we know that one of the most difficult to adopt because of the regulatory requirements and governance and so forth. If you had to pick up sort of two challenges, the most underestimated, what would they be when it comes to AI adoption?
Asking, it's a very interesting question, actually. Like any AI, platform or AI use case, the most important thing here is the data. And all fintechs, they work in, existing data from financial services. They become like a part of financial services, banks, and so on. And unfortunately, over years and years, most of the data, big banks and so on, or banks in general, they are in silos. And the data quality become, it's not really up to the level where you can really go and, able to run algorithm on it and get results easily. So the data quality is and data as well, consolidation of data is another risk, which is another challenge as well, because, it's become like a lot of silos in banking and financial services. And so the quality of data and not having the data consolidated in a way, some banks are, succeeded in getting this, consolidation to a good level. And then you are able really to run, innovation around AI and fintechs and so on. So the first thing is the data quality and the data availability as well. Second, which you mentioned is the question itself, is regulation. As soon as you touch on data, so privacy comes in place. You need quite lots of data for customers. You need to handle this data and so on. So privacy risks and so on become another a challenge for fintechs. Knowing as well that fintechs, they don't have the big muscle what banks is having from the social security teams. They spend lots of money in security. Most of fintechs, they come with an innovation around solving a problem, So, but when it comes to security, to compliance and so on, we hit issues here. And I was in the discussion yesterday with one of the fintechs trying to collaborate with one of the banks. And then it comes, the guy's doing a great job. But at the same time, you need to see, compliance, risk, all of these are a different, a second, it comes, especially when you are working around data and information, which is customer data mainly, and knowing that like you have in Europe, the GDPR is active. And nowadays in each and every country, we have this kind of compliance for customer data and so on are there. So these two, I would say, the most important one when it comes to AI and fintech and AI use cases in financial services is the data quality, data availability, data consolidation, and data governance as well. So many things around data, and plus the privacy and risks which is around this data, which fintechs has to take care of it as well very much. So they are able to be integrated within the ecosystem of financial services.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And look, you've touched on things such as compliance and breaches. We know, like in Australia, we've had so many breaches globally in some of our biggest banks and biggest organizations. So I'm not surprised that obviously that the theme of breach and data privacy and security is even elevated even before the onset of mass adoption of AI. So no, thank you very much. Sounds like basic hygiene of data is one of the most important things. Dmitry, I was going to throw it to you from a global perspective. Like from your experience, what are the most common mistakes you're seeing enterprises and organizations, I guess, make when trying to implement things such as, and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so we are working with a lot of different enterprises and also fintechs and banks. Let's start with very common mistake is maybe it's not even relevant to AI, but specifically of lack of clear business objectives. So, AI is not just a hype. It's a chance to really solve real business topics, right? And in sometimes, right? So organizations have a budget, has a willingness, and so on, but doesn't translate this willingness to a clear, measurable return on investment or KPIs or products, right? So that solve real business problems, right? So in the organization. On top of it, organizations also sometimes missing that it's a shift in culture, right? So how you actually need to implement such projects. It's completely different way of implementation in many cases. So maybe to add up to what Roushdy said, right? So data is very important, but there are still differences of how you treat the data in nowadays AI implementations, right? So this is first mistake, right? I mean, not having any clear objectives. To add on to what was said about the data, many organizations think that AI will solve all their data problems. And this is not like this. So, the famous phrase when we were building data lakes is garbage in, garbage out, right? So still valid. So, and this is exactly what some organizations maybe misunderstand, because actually you need to be ready with the data for having a good AI solutions. So AI solutions overall, this is not new topic, right? So AI existing for many years already. So if we are talking about machine learning, deep learning, and so on. But nowadays, a lot of new technologies introduced, like with generative AI, different APIs, RAGs, agentic AI, and so on. And the basis for all this is data. And I think that underestimating the data quality is, I would say, the second common mistake, right? So in the organization that we see right now in implementing different projects. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So data and clear objectives. And I think it makes sense, right? As soon as a new piece of technology comes out, often organizations jump on it and have a solution and then go trying to find a problem, right? Without knowing what problem trying to solve. Yeah, it's very common. No, thank you. Dr. Youssef, I'm going to throw it to you. Obviously, we've heard from a fintech perspective and we've heard from a global perspective, but you very much come from the hospital and healthcare space, which we know is obviously highly regulated, a lot of governance, and they're more risk averse. In your opinion or your experience, what are some of the biggest roadblocks that you've experienced when trying to, get healthcare organizations, the hospitals, integrate and adopt artificial intelligence?
From our experience, the biggest roadblock to AI integration in hospitals, it has consistently been the data fragmentation and the interoperability challenges, as usual. And you all know that AI without data is not feasible. So hospitals, they often struggle with fragmented and siloed and poorly structured data, which is scattered across multiple isolated systems. It makes this incredibly challenging for AI solutions, because we need to deliver meaningful insights or predictions. So without cleaning, consistent, and interoperable data, I think even the most advanced AI system, they become ineffective. So there is as well additional substantial roadblocks like organizational culture and staff resistance. We in the medical field, before AI, we usually face lack of resistance from the clinicians, from the staff in implementing electronic medical record. Now, when it comes to AI, it's more difficult. So the clinicians, they may hesitate to trust AI recommendations. They fear of this technology. It might undermine their clinical judgment and their autonomy. There are also concerns about privacy, about infrastructure and technology readiness. And of course, the one major roadblock is the cost and resource constraint. there should be a significant upfront investment which is required to implement robust AI systems. And we all know that many hospitals, they struggle with the necessary budget, infrastructure, and personnel training. So I guess addressing these roadblocks demands a strategic approach. Should prioritize the change management, the cross-functional collaboration, and clinical engagement, and as well as substantial investment in infrastructure and training.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And it's a really good segue. You talked about sort of clinicians and being, I guess, risk averse and not, I guess, open to that change, which is a good segue to questions to Samuel. You're all about behavior, right? And behavioral challenges. What are some of the stories you can share or what you've observed in terms of AI adoption, given, we've just, Dr. Youssef just talked about clinicians being a perfect example of not feeling comfortable about using such technology?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of interesting stories. And I think connecting also to what Dmitry was saying, I think in many ways, there's both a lack of understanding of, objectives and problems that people are really needing to solve with AI. It's more kind of blindly trying to be applied. But also behind every objective, every KPI is behaviors, right? So if we want to achieve certain objectives, we have to change certain behaviors. And so I think even when we talk about culture change, there's no culture change without behavior change. And so for me, that's kind of the world that I am coming from and really trying to understand the behavior barriers that exist for AI adoption. And I think one mistake is that we really think about AI adoption as only a technical thing, like only about trying to get the technical things in place and not understanding the kind of the really human behavioral components to it. And again, what Youssef was saying, I think speaks to, something I see a lot is something, related to cognitive dissonance around kind of making sense of this, a reality where you have something extremely capable and intelligent, at least you've heard it being that. But for a lot of either clinicians or end users, they're oftentimes not really given the tools or mental models to really make use of them in a useful way. And so they oftentimes can have really negative interactions or they can feel kind of, as I said, like the autonomy can be stripped away. But I think a really interesting, I guess, other bias in some ways is combination of, let's say, I would say some form of ostrich effect as well, and present bias. And it's almost like it's a little bit of a tricky thing to untangle right now. Like, how can we make use of these things in our teams, in our organizations? And I think a lot of leaders can sometimes default to just in the moment thinking it's easier to do nothing. And so they put their head in the sand as an ostrich and just hoping at some point it's going to be like super easy to integrate AI. It's going to be some form of magic wand. And I think it's part of doing anything human. Like it requires thoughtful integration. It requires taking steps, many steps. And I think it's better to do so now than waiting.
Popular courses that we continue to run even to this day is just a fundamental AI workshops, because our goal is to try and demystify and break that, that cognitive dissonance and barriers to people trying to even understand the technology, so then they're a bit more open to using it. I will come back at the end, ask you a follow-up question around behavior change. Behavior change takes a long time, yet the speed of technology is going really quickly, and the two are at that conflict with each other, right? So
yeah, I do think there's some, because I come from understanding habits is like my main area of expertise, and people want to know how many days that takes to form a habit. Well, the truth is that it depends, but it takes time, and if we want people to use AI thoughtfully and so on, I think it's one thing to specifically just know what to do, but I think especially when it comes to executives or leaders, I think it also requires updating their mental models or kind of how to think about AI. And a lot of that takes time as well. So it's not only that the behaviors takes time to change, but also I think it takes time sometimes for leadership to really make sense of the world we're in right now. And both, I think, I would say profound opportunities that exist and really how to think about integrating that in a thoughtful way. And I guess like just as a random fun story, I do think it's interesting that there's never been a time where you have someone in your organization that is already adopting something without wanting to tell anyone, because they have kind of incentives against maybe sharing that they have doubled their productivity with using some AI related stuff. Because if they tell that to their boss, the boss will say, okay, well, here's double amount of work for you. And so I think that's an interesting time.
And also, I think I want to add about the social acceptance. So I really like what someone just said. And I mean, I was doing the keynote last week in Frankfurt, and the topic of social acceptance was raised. And the thing is very interesting is that many people actually want to adopt AI, right? But when you ask the question, if would you allow, for example, for the AI agent, super smart AI agent, trained, right? So to manage the cybersecurity of your company? No. The same like with healthcare. Would you allow AI agent to manage certain things that requires human in the loop, right? So like doctor. No. The same in some cases. The same happening with fintech. I was building fintech for the last 10 years, right? So the fact is that social acceptance is very important, right? So now I think the trend is in the way that people really want to use it, companies really want to adopt it, but for now it is seen as an augmentation tool and not a replacement tool, right? Because many organizations exactly think that it can be a boost for the productivity, efficiency, maybe cost and so on, but it's still required that human will be in the loop of different critical decisions, right? So whether it's healthcare, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's fintech or any other industry. So I think I really agree with what was said before about it takes time, right? So to the people to get used to it, to adopt it. And it's not only technological topic, it's really about the mindset and mentality of the organization. So yeah, thanks everyone for raising the topic. I really like it.
Cool. Now, look, we could talk behavior till the cows come home because obviously it's a very complex bit. But I do want to change the topics a little bit, right? So let's talk about data structures and strategies, infrastructure, right? We know that we talked about data already, garbage in, garbage out. So we need to have good data that's cleansed. And, Roushdy, you talked about that. And so I'm keen to understand from from an infrastructure perspective that can make and break and, the scalability and what strategies people have adopted. So, Mohamed, I'll go back to you again. So you've obviously led AI transformations across, financial institutions. When it comes to AI infrastructure investment and selection, what's a key mistake you see? So we've talked about data, but more about the infrastructure and selection of sort of platforms. What are the mistakes that you've heard and seen?
It is, the problem now that the people sometimes they try to buy more than what they need.
Yeah.
We always like to have a rolled rice, but we need maybe another nice car, which is another mid-size, whatever it is. So sometimes people go for the heist and they go and get the, lots of resources or the procure, and then at the end of the day, they are not using much of it because we have another issue really with some focus on technology more than strategy. So I think that's a big thing happening around AI, about any new technology. We go very much on technology. We try to procure the best, and then the strategy is not there. And then what we're trying to do is to fit the business into technology. It should be we're fitting the technology into the business. And I go for use cases. I go for something which is bringing a value to me. And if it's AI use case, I go for it. If it's not, I don't have to. But unfortunately, what happened, we have the blockchain wave. Now that's another AI wave. But AI, we can see that the value is in front of us. Lots of great value happening. And you don't need just to have an AI project. There is not a full AI project, actually, on AI initiative. You have a business problem you are solving using technology. So you have to start from here and allocate the technology, the infrastructure needed for that. Could be AI, it could be AI, IoT, it could be AI, IoT, blockchain, it could be many things. So I believe this issue we're having, we have to make sure the strategy push the technology, or lead first, and based on the strategy and use cases, and anything should have a purpose. There is value coming from anything you are trying to do, and infrastructure technology will be an enabler here. So I believe this is where we are facing with any new technology. AI is one. Blockchain has been on the same before, few years back, and lots of money was spent in things which might not really utilize very much. So you have to make sure that your strategy and you're knowing what value you will get from this kind of investment you are doing, and and you have to keep an eye on that. It's very, very.
It's funny you say that, Mohamed, right? So if we go back 10 to 15 years, everything you said, people would go, yes, of course. I need to understand my needs for the business. And then I'll go and look at a vendor and I'll sort of assess the vendor. For some reason, when it's come to AI, maybe the speed at which is going, maybe the fanfare that's going around it, I think many CTOs and leaders have forgotten the best practice of making decisions around infrastructure and selecting platforms, right? It's almost like for everything else, be it, like you said, blockchain, IoT, or even just, using Microsoft or other sort of platforms, they go, no, we go through this is our need. When it comes to AI, they just grab the first thing and hope for the best. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, that's what I mean, and always, let me say it in a different way as well. This kind of initiative should be led by businesses and P&L people, not technology people. Always technology people like me and others, they would love to have the best, I like to have this toy, it's a great thing to play around AI, around whatever, it's great for us because we love it, honestly. So we have to make sure that, businesses and so on are really the one, or the strategy is the one leading, and then, infrastructure and all will come in place. Rightly what you said, it's the same, what I'm trying to say as well here.
Yeah, it hasn't really changed, has it? Yeah, no, thank you. Dr. Youssef, this question is back to you. So we've talked about AI, we talked about data readiness, and obviously in a healthcare setting, data as well as fintech, but more equally from a healthcare setting, making sure the data is ready is fundamental and crucial, right? Because you're dealing with people's lives, you're dealing with healthcare. If there's some of the core steps that you think, people in the healthcare space should think about to ensure that data is sort of ready before even AI adoption happens, like what would some of those tasks be? What would some of those sort of initiatives?
You mean about the readiness or about the steps that should be done?
Yeah, about just making sure that to ensure that data is ready,
Yes.
in the healthcare space, and it's ready and meaningful for AI.
As I said, working in data in the medical field is different from other things because there is decision about patients' lives. So it's very difficult and very crucial. The hospitals, they aim to embark effectively on their AI integration journey. So they should prioritize some foundational steps in order to overcome any data-related challenge. So first, they should establish a clear data governance. So and they should have policies defining roles, responsibilities, and standards for data management. As well, that we should have guidelines for data access, the privacy, security, and ethical use. Exactly, we have a major issue in the ethical use in data in medicine. We have to have, in medicine, we have standard language. We have to have this standardized language to ensure that the data quality is clean and validated. We have the ICD-10 terminology. We have a lot of data that we have to do it. So this will help us having clean data in order to come out with the proper decisions. Garbage in, garbage out. We are always saying this, so this applies here as well. And about interoperability is very important because we have multi-system connection. So we should have a proper integration between the old legacy system and the new AI tools in order to prevent any data silos and fragmentation. And it's very important as well that we have to invest in a scalable and secure infrastructure. It's very important to include the cloud solutions to handle large volumes of structured and unstructured data, but we have to make sure about as well the security about when going to cloud solutions, because data for patients, we have the HIPAA compliance in the States and the GDPR in Europe, so we have to have all this in alignment. And we have to prioritize the infrastructure that supports, let's say, the the real-time analytics and the AI-driven decision making. It's very important as well to have the staff and trust and competence all along to conduct training and awareness session for all the people to make sure that clinicians they know how to benefit from AI. So addressing this, we have to create the necessary groundwork for successful AI integration. We have to enable hospitals to maximize benefits from the investment in AI, ultimately to improve patient care and operational efficiency.
Yeah, no, thank you. You talked about the patient data and the volumes of data that come in. I'm going to ask you a question, Samuel, at the back of this. So we know already that large language models and AI system already have inherent biases built in, right? As humans, we have biases. The technology that we built, we introduced these biases. These large language models are trained on data and information that we produce with our own biases and so forth. And at the same time, even just taking, Dr. Youssef at, patient data or Mohamed's, financial data, there's inherent biases in that data as well, right? How, in your opinion, how do you ensure that organizations, A, understand, and B, can identify and proactively mitigate these biases, either from a system perspective or their own existing systems? Because if that bias then gets built in, you're making really risky decisions based on biased data. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, in some ways, I think you took the main talking point, is like just admitting and understanding that aspect, that in some ways that bias is inherently unavoidable in some ways. We talk a lot about these days about AI alignment as well, and I think that is obviously really important, but we should also admit that, we as humans are very misaligned. All of us here have probably different opinions about what makes for a good pizza or manouche or whatever you want to make with your bread. So it's hard to expect that, especially with large language models, that they will be perfectly mimicking, the things that we maybe have in our target populations and so on. I do think the big thing is also understanding that we have in behavioral science a kind of a recurring challenge, which is basically called weird problems, where a lot of the research that's been done in behavioral science traditionally has been done in kind of Western, industrialized, educated, and so on settings. And so it's pretty skewed understanding of, not what behavior looks like as a whole, but how it looks like for college students in the US, and I think some of those things are really true here as well. I interestingly work quite a bit now with looking at synthetic users and synthetic use cases and so on, where people are trying to use AI to basically mimic their users in some way, where they basically create a data set that is aimed to kind of allow for them to communicate with the data sets as their kind of almost synthetic users. And with that, I think the main challenge is, again, to really benchmark and understand, what are the biases that my users have or my patients have. So it's not that it's about removing biases, but it's understanding what are the characteristics and what are the biases that is inherent in my specific context. And so really embracing that, really understanding your users. And I think, if anything, the good that can come out of this is being even more interested in understanding who are our patients, what is their reality, and how can we reflect that in the data we have so that we don't have a strong mismatch.
Yeah, great. It's funny. I've written down synthetic data, which I was going to get to, but maybe I'll bring it up now because it's timely. And Mohamed, first you, and maybe Dr. Youssef afterwards, because I'm keen to understand from a financial services perspective and a healthcare perspective, does the theme of synthetic data even come into the conversation? Is that something, Mohamed, that you've had to even consider and navigate?
Yeah, definitely. The information and data of financial services, many of it, is there, and many we have to start working around it to bring a value and see if we can, expect this data or find the ways to solve the problem of missing some data from the customer. Can this data we simulate from other customer behavior, and so on. So I think that's one of the good ways to bring this, to better quality, to have a better data quality and fill the gaps, which is for the data issue, which is very, very important for financial services, fintechs, and so on. Synthetic data, it's very important, I would say. And I think many financial services organizations are working around it. And they have quite good successful use cases around this one too.
Fantastic. Dr. Youssef, what about you? In a healthcare setting, does the conversation of synthetic data get talked about or get brought up?
In medicine, we are now having this new trend about the digital twin, medical digital twin. So the synthetic data is doing, we are expecting a lot of breakthrough in AI and digital twin when we are simulating everything on the twin, on the digital twin before trying it on the human. So it's really a new world that we are expecting to have now. So anything related to the drug discovery, anything related to testing disease, even they can simulate any condition on the patient, on our twin, on digital twin before trying it on us. So it's scalable. We can get too much data on it. We can do a lot of research. So it's very important to use this in the medical field. I expect a lot of things that are going to happen. Initially, you were talking about being complementary, the AI world. I have a lot of fear in the medical field, not being only complementary, the AI. So we're having a lot of issues about this. And this is why we have to call for international alliance for a safe and responsible AI.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Before we wrap up this theme around data, strategy, and infrastructure, Dmitry, I'm going to put it to you. Obviously, I'm hoping there's a few CTOs on the call, maybe more than so. And when you're making sort of infrastructure and technology decisions, you always have to have a trade-off, right? And I guess I'm curious to know from your perspective, any advice you can give a fellow CTOs on the call, any trade-offs and architectural decisions that they need to make when designing some things such as data pipelines to support the scaling of, the technology specifically.
Yeah, sure. So I think let's start with, it really depends on the stage of the company. Let's start with this. Obviously, if you are early stage startup and you are doing MVP, right? So just to launch some market fit testing, then probably the trade-off would be not to build a robust data infrastructure and data pipelines because you still don't know whether your product will be alive after half a year. So opposite to other companies, especially on the scaling, Series A, Series D, or big enterprises, right? So like banks and so on, obviously you need to consider a lot of things. It also depends on what type of AI data you are building, because if you are talking about for example, machine learning, right? So there are many tools on the market. It's a not new topic, right? So we are talking about TensorFlow or SageMaker over AWS. There are many different tools how you can actually implement it. If you're talking about the APIs, if you're talking about generative AI, which is becoming very popular nowadays, became very popular, then I don't see a big difference. So in many cases, at least use cases that we are working with, then calling just simple API, right? I mean, it is a bit of context, a bit of tokens, right? So, but overall, it's not a big difference from API-based calls. Opposite to something like if you are talking about agentic AI, RAGs, if you are talking about fine-tuned models, right? So obviously there are a lot of considerations need to be taken there, right? Especially training of those models. How you want to augment, how the context timing will be. All these decisions are very important. If you are talking about the basic data pipelines, then obviously many decisions the CTO needs to make are the same, or at least similar to what was when we were building data lakes, right? So not AI ready infrastructure. For example, there is a decision to be made whether you want to treat real-time or batch data, right? So let's start with this. If it's real-time, right, so usually it's use cases like fraud or trading or bidding or streaming or video, audio, and so on. And then you need to treat real-time data, and you need to be selecting the tool set which is suitable for this specifically. If you are talking about the batch, there are many tools also on the market, but this is completely different use case, right? So when you don't have a time sensitivity, especially of milliseconds and so on. Then I think the second thing that you need to consider is, in general, everything related to the governance, right? So and security, because I believe that almost every industry is impacted by this. This is not only for healthcare, right? So maybe for some use cases it's much more sensitive because it's also HIPAA data and so on. But almost every industry should be aware and to make sure that the topics of responsible AI, ethical AI, and in general governance are implemented correctly. And here the question, okay, so at which stage and how much you will be integrating the data governance, right? And it really depends on the use case, in my opinion. Another thing is, I would say, if you are talking about the storage of the data, right? There are many things that need to be considered also, how you store the data. For example, if you are talking about the conventional storages like S3, for example, is one case, but then the question is in which region, how you will approach this data. Another use case might be, for example, that you need to query data on certain way, right? So time series, for example, and then things like BigQuery, Snowflake, and many other solutions that can actually help. If you're talking specifically about the trade-offs, right? I mean, it's always more or less the same things, right? So how well it's designed, how much cost you want to save or actually put in, and how fast you want to develop the solution. It depends on the stage of the company. So I think this is more or less would be my answer. And I'm trying to be generic, right? So as much as possible, but it's really, really, really important to understand what is your specific use case, right? What stage of the company, which type of the particular product you are building, on which infrastructure you are running. Do you want to have on-prem infrastructure or cloud infrastructure because of different reasons and so on? So I think it's really, really depends on your particular use case.
Yeah. So particular use case, size of the organization, where you are within the journey. Yeah, I guess that, again, that's agnostic of AI with any technology, right? Those are sort of things that all right, let's change angles now. I think at the very start, and Dmitry talked about, business objectives. You've got to make sure that there's the right solution that's solving the right problem. So I guess in this section, I just want to talk about identifying and prioritizing AI use cases. And I think for this one, I'm going to start with you, Samuel. We talked about behavior. We talk about, a version of humans adopting these technologies. What are some common mistakes, or even, I guess, on the other side, what are some of the places you've seen as worked well, that organizations done really well when rolling out AI that ensures not necessarily poor adoption, but on the opposite, seen sort of great mass adoption by, staff and consumers and users?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that was as like common mistake is probably that, again, going back to what maybe I said before around this, not seeing it as a behavioral challenge, but also I think you're seeing it as any, software adoption as before. It's not the same. It's quite different.
Yes.
And I think it's quite different on many different levels to make sense of, because it's, one concept that I think is useful for a lot of people to know and understand is this idea of jagged frontier. Basically that how AI develops is not in a way where it's always on the same level of generating value on each thing you ask it. And I think a lot of people have perception around AI, maybe from, let's say, 6 or 12 months ago, where they, interact with an AI and they first maybe get a good answer, but then they ask another question and get a really stupid answer, for example. And so this kind of, it's hard for us visually to make sense of that. One tool or one technology can be both profoundly intelligent and capable, but at the same time, at certain things, be really, really stupid and really, really kind of less capable. And so I think that makes a lot of people throw out the baby with the bathwater, basically, because they just think, they don't see that jagged nature, and so they come to kind of the wrong conclusions. In terms of what I see as like good use cases or like success stories, I do think, interestingly, that sometimes they can often come a little bit bottom up. We talked a little bit about it coming from the top and understanding that it's really important that leadership understands this. But oftentimes I work a lot with like machine learning and data people, and they can oftentimes be pretty good at maybe noticing things that maybe the higher ups aren't noticing in terms of adding efficiencies. I think another mistake is that what people think AI adoption needs to look like is that everyone needs to use something like ChatGPT. I don't think that's really what needs to happen. Oftentimes, really great AI can look in ways where you don't even notice it's there, basically. That's probably the best use cases where you some people in your organization is noticing, my life is a little bit easier. The tasks that used to take more time take less time. Doctors that need to do certain things that was not serving at top of their license are now allowing them to serve more at top of their license. So like, I think good AI adoption can actually be relatively invisible if it's done well. So I think that's probably another thing that I see quite a bit. And I think, for example, just as a really hands-on example, I work a lot with digital health, and one thing we're seeing now is that we can really kind of make small changes in especially how text is being kind of managed and presented to clinicians and so on. And so both things are done in advance of them having to interact in the background. They kind of prepares things for them. And then also when they write something, when they do something, that it gives them a little bit like help to make it even better. So thought for integration, I think it's the challenge, but I think oftentimes, again, the best is oftentimes quite invisible.
Yeah, no, interesting. Thank you. Dr. Youssef, at the back of this, we talked about adoption, and you've mentioned that obviously, we know from stats that in the healthcare space, AI adoption is probably slower than most others because of the, adverse risk and, impact on human life. Are there very simple, quick win use cases that, people in the healthcare settings or hospitals can potentially consider? We talked about the digital twin, but is there anything else that's quick? It's quick and it's simple that, organizations in the healthcare settings can apply while they sort of sort out their sort of change management and governance aspect of the organization?
Well, we started AI in the medical field long time ago, 50 years ago. And we started it especially in the electronic medical records and the clinical decision support. So I guess one of the major quick win, it's the clinical decision support with its predictive analysis value, because it solves immediate operational issues, and it requires minimal initial infrastructure. So this clinical decision support, it has immediate clinical impact because the AI-driven predictive models, such as patient's deterioration, predicting patient hospitalization, sepsis, or any readmission, can quickly reduce complications, reduce the hospital stay, and overall cost. So this will encourage people, especially the decision makers, stakeholders who are not into the medical, that one of the quick win is clinical decision support. And it's very easy to integrate in the electronic medical record. It does not need any hardware, software. It's already built in. And now with AI, usually before we were using it as alert notification, but now because of AI, the flood data needed use, we are doing it for predictive analysis, and it's very important. So clinical decision support is a quick win, for sure.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, hopefully if people who are on the call who come from the healthcare or medical settings can start to think about that, medical and patient health records. Mohamed, I guess back to you, and in the fintech space, we talked about quick wins, Samuel's talked about behavior change and maybe looking at opportunities where potentially someone's not talking about. In your opinion, Doc, do you have any methods, frameworks, or ways to help organizations prioritize like which use cases to go for and which ones not to?
Yeah, that's very important. Maybe like when we even discussed the previous question, people, like I said, they try to fit the business into technology and so on. So I think the framework for identifying, prioritizing AI use cases is very, very important. I would say it's around three pillars. The first pillar and the most important one, I would say, which is all business look for, is the business value and return on investment. Anything you would like to do at any time, it has to bring a value to the organization. And of course, CEOs and decision makers, they look at the numbers. So it's very important that this will have some kind of value. Value could be, it can impact revenue, it can cost efficiency, either increase revenue, cost efficiency, customer experience. And then what's very important here, because our colleagues talk about it as well, AI projects is different from any other project you're doing. It's not a software development or software implementation. So you need also to look at, what is the quick win which you can generate tangible, results in a quick time, 6-12 months, which is, so people could feel the value of AI, so it's very important. So the first pillar here is business value and return on investment. The second one, we should talk about it, the data readiness. No matter what you want to do, if you don't have the right data, you cannot do much, or you can't do anything most likely. So you have to make sure that, before you start, that your data is available, the data readiness is there. And the third one, which we talk about as well, is the compliance. Because you can do great work at the end of the day, you might not be able to go because, your regulatory does not allow you. Maybe talk about synthesized data as well. You might use it because, you don't need to use real customer data, for example. So this three pillar, business value and return on investment, data readiness and feasibility of the data itself, and its scalability and compliance, I would say, it's very, very important. If you have the three, then you are able to go into this, use case and then get the value. As I said, try to also to get the quick wins, because businesses or organization are used to the normal cycle of software development or implementation. But here you need to do tuning, you need to do model training, you need to do A/B test, you need to do many things to make sure that really you are bringing a value here. So try also any quick wins you have to show organizations, part of the business value and ROI pillar.
Fantastic. It's funny. Maybe it's a coincidence. You've got three pillars. From a design thinking background, we often talk about desirability, feasibility, and viability, right? And which in effect is the same. Desirability.
Yes, this is the same.
Is there a use case? Is there a customer wanting it? From a viability perspective, compliance, and from a feasibility, it's about data readiness, right? It's exactly the same thing.
But that's true. That's true. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's what people should look at. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got about 8 minutes. I'm cognizant that people who are on Riverside can actually ask questions via the chat. So while I'll sort of go through some final sort of questions for some of the speakers here, if you've got any questions, by all means, put it into the chat and hopefully we've got enough to address them. So Samuel, human behavior. We talked, I think maybe it was Dr. Youssef or somebody else who said AI is often being driven by IT and technology. Right. Well, I think maybe it was Mohamed who said, no, it's actually about business objectives and bringing procurement and other organization departments into the conversation. Any last words or recommendations on how we can bridge the gap between often siloed business units who are trying to drive, I guess, AI technology, but from their own agenda?
You're asking me such an easy question here. Thank you for...
Tell us. Tell the audience.
How to solve all of the biggest challenges in most organizations that leads to poor innovation. I do think that's the stuff that comes back in AI as with everything. There's challenges with organizations where there's a lot of misaligned incentives, and there are some people that can dramatically benefit from AI in maybe some ways more than others. And it's a little bit of a tangle, but I think a lot of it comes from, again, we talked about a lot, this inherently human aspects where it's natural if you don't understand something to kind of be wary of it. And especially if you misunderstand it, it can also be easy to minimize it or to just call it a hype or something. So I don't think anyone who really understands AI would call it a hype at this point, in terms of it can create great value if it's done correctly. But I think in the end, I think the advice probably from my end is to to meet people where they are. If they have concerns and so on, they could be very valid concerns. And I think seeing is believing. So it's not so much you can tell people that AI is valuable. You have to also kind of show it, and you have to help people experience it in clear ways. So I don't think the solution is to just, demand people to respect technology or something. Like, we have to work with people to help them see it and believe it from that point of view.
Thank you.
I think maybe just to add on this is like it's also very relevant to the skill set of the people. I agree that you cannot demand, right? So people just embrace AI tomorrow, right? So you need to teach them, right? So, you need to teach and upskill the workforce of how to work with AI. So, whether it's building AI solutions, like we, for example, working with a lot of CTOs, we're hiring a lot of AI engineers, right? Because the organization doesn't have the skill set to build sometimes new AI solutions, right? On the other side, it's also the users, right? So almost every tool today has some AI component, right? So once it was the tool without AI, and now almost every organization already implementing some sort of copilots, right? So of whether it's email writing, whether it's any other task that you're doing, and it's the products which are already integrated in the organization. And only by teaching the users, right? So, and giving them a skill set, like internal training programs, so workshops, so hackathons, right? So how to use properly AI, I think can significantly increase the chances of adoption, right? So we are an organization. So I think this is just another review on this.
No, 100%. I agree. And I think this is why at Academy XI and with part of RandomWalk, we put a lot of emphasis on education, right? From foundational level to leadership level. And there's a question asked by someone in the chat around, should leaders do training? I 100% agree. I'm going to probably, the last question before we wrap up, which is in 3 minutes, back to you, Dr. Youssef. So you've emphasized, and in fact, I think you've helped implement sort of the AI readiness assessments to places like the Arab Hospital Federation, and also some AI training. We've talked about the importance of the education, but more on that, like a readiness assessment. Why do you think that's important?
Yes, it is very important. In my experience working the Arab Hospitals Federation and the regional healthcare leaders, we conducting the AI readiness and providing target AI training is very critical, because it will help to assess the current maturity in many dimensions in the hospitals, like data quality, technical infrastructure, governance, ethical consideration, organizational culture, and skills. And for the training, it's very important to have this for informed leadership decision, driving cultural acceptance, ensuring effective integration, and as well, we're having this sustainability and long-term success. And we are working on this to make sure this culture is present. So combining readiness assessment and training, it ensures a strategic, sustainable, and kind of effective AI transformation across Arab Hospitals Federation member hospitals. And this empowers our healthcare institutions to leverage AI successfully in terms of improving healthcare outcomes, operational efficiency, and overall patient care across the region. And hope we can make it more now functional and in the region, in the Arab one.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Look, with 2 minutes to go, I'm not sure we'll be able to cover the questions, but I guess I wanted to just summarize, what we've talked about. We've talked about, quality and some hygiene factors around data. We've talked about not shoving AI as a technology into the workforce, but looking for opportunities and education and upskilling. I think we talked about sort of the importance of ensuring that the right business objectives are met. I think, Dmitry, you started at the start, I think highly resonate with that. And I think, Dr. Youssef, you talked about, quick wins, especially in the healthcare settings where obviously risk and compliance is so fraught with, I guess, putting the brakes on when it comes to adopting such technologies. So I think, I'll be honest with you, I think we can talk about these for probably another 2-3 days each, but I just wanted to take the time to just stop it here. Thanks for the audience who participated through Riverside. And I wanted to thank every one of you from all over the world and where you've come from. It was a pleasure facilitating this conversation. I hope we get to do it again. And also, thanks to our partner, RandomWalk, and also Academy Excite to sort of helping facilitate this session altogether. So, by all means, maybe just a quick goodbye for everybody else. Maybe you guys can say a quick goodbye, and then we can leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who's been listening. You take care.